Hello everyone, my name is Kaden King and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I find interesting and scary stories online and I read them here on the channel. If you have stories of your own, there is a link down below in the description for a subreddit page along with any of my social media accounts. If you want to contact me there, it's totally cool with me. Also, if you have any requests for the channel of stories that you'd like me to read on here or anything that you find interesting yourself, please let me know. I am more than happy to find new stories and add new kind of genres and all sorts of things. But anyway, for now, enjoy the video. I was working on a no-budget film, a really trashy script, weird plot, no redeeming values at all. Toward the end of the production, me and the director were going around getting second unit inserts. We were on the 59th Street at 6 AM on a Sunday morning, unloading the camera. We were going up to a penthouse he knew of to get a shot looking down into Central Park. No one knew about the film other than the production crew and the actors. It would never, ever have been mentioned in any media. So the director and I are unloading and there's no one around, except for one homeless man. He's shuffling along the sidewalk, heading in our direction. He's one of the sad mentally ill people that our society refuses to help, so his schizophrenia is untreated, and he's out on the streets, and he's talking to himself non-stop as he comes along. When he gets to us, he looks at us and says, "And here are those guys that are making that movie about," and he proceeds to rattle off the entire plot line as he walks past, as if he were reading the IMDb synopsis. None of our equipment was visible, so there was no way that anyone would recognize us as a film crew. The director and I looked at each other, like, what just happened? This is a short experience and it only happened once, but here it goes. Last year in 2021, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I was sleeping by my girlfriend in her apartment. It was probably around 3 or 4 AM. I got up to use the restroom. Kinda had a hard time going back to sleep. So maybe 5 minutes or so after getting back into bed, I was laying on my back with my head facing left towards the wall. I had my left arm raised over my head hanging off the edge of the bed. My girlfriend was sleeping with her back facing me, and my right arm was on my stomach. It was dead silent. My girlfriend has a lot of little dogs who bark at anyone that walks by the front door. I didn't hear no footsteps, no voice or form of movement. All of a sudden, I feel someone grab my left hand that's hanging off the bed. At first I thought it was my girlfriend, so I didn't think much of it, until I realized that my left hand is on the opposite side. I opened my eyes, but I could only see it from my right eye because my left eye was blocked by my arm. Without turning my head, I saw a man through a mirror on the wall. His face was painted white, pasty white. He had shoulder-length hair that was curly and light/dirty brown color hair. I could only see what the night light in the room illuminated. It was definitely a white man with very strong built body type. He had no clothes on from what I could tell, and he was holding something in his right hand. It was like a stick with something bushy at the end, and it was hovering above my stomach. Man, I thought someone broke into the apartment or something. I don't know. Still, no noise at all, no movement, and the grip of his hand was not hard at all. I was looking at him for a good 10 seconds. I finally worked up the courage to turn my head and get a visual of this man, but he vanished. And when I looked back the other way, the mirror I saw him through vanished as well. I woke up my girlfriend immediately and told her what happened. I don't know if this has anything to do with what happened, but I'm Native American, and when I told my tradition relatives about it, they gave me a possible answer to what I saw. I live in the heart of a city in Arizona, by the way. If anyone has any insight or experienced something like this, please, I'd love to know. As a tween and teen, I was a die-hard theatre kid. It was fall and I was in a local community theatre production of Annie, a few cities away. I distinctly kept two groups of friends, my school friends and my theatre friends. This was because my theatre friends were majority religious, homeschooled and sheltered kids who did theatre as a way to socialize. None of them went to school with me. They lived in adjacent areas and travelled, as I did, to do community theatre in this nearby city. As a way to meet in the middle, my mom suggested that we have a party with my theatre friends after rehearsal so that no one has to travel. I suggested that we have a karaoke party because I loved my karaoke machine and innocently believed that any place that hosted karaoke nights would surely be welcoming to 15 teenagers singing show tunes. My mom, chaperone of the century, found a seedy dive bar in the area that started karaoke pretty early and served bar food. Night of, my friends and I obviously bustle into the dive bar with my mom leading the pack. She ordered us a bunch of onion rings and fries, pushed some tables together, and my group of friends and I go about our business, hogging the songbook, looking for Wicked. At one point I looked around. This bar must have been dead before we came in because only a handful of people besides us were in the bar. They were a group of Marines, no doubt from the nearby military base, and one of them was aggressively hitting on my mom. There were two old dudes who looked like regulars. Then in the only occupied booth in the corner, there was a person sitting alone, and something about him made my spidey senses tingle. At first I thought my suspicion was internalized judgment, because this man was in his 60s or 70s, and he was dressed in women's clothing. Although he might have identified himself differently if he had grown up in the 2020s. I'm referring to him as a man because that's how he's identified in articles and things. He was wearing black heels and pantyhose, a teal pencil skirt/jacket combo, a bob wig, pink lipstick, bright blush, and sunglasses. He was drinking dark liquor with an unsteady hand. As he figured out our songs and settled in, my friend's eyes wandered around the room too. My most sheltered, most religious friend, Holly, whispered to me, asking me why that man was dressed the way he was. Sweet, ignorant Holly. I'll have been the friend who taught her the ways of the world. I patiently explained what little I knew about trans people and cross-dressing, and besides my friends making very obvious glances in his general direction, the subject was dropped. But shortly after we all sang, "Let's Get Down to Business," to defeat the Huns, the MC broke our streak of consecutive performances to welcome up Carl to the stage. Of course, the person sitting in the booth stood up and took a very shaky sip from his cup. I remember looking at him, making a short walk onto the karaoke stage, and thinking that I've never seen someone so stressed out in my life. His body was tense, knees locked, and though the eyes were covered by sunglasses, it was clear that his gaze was fixed, far off. The intro music started to play, jingly, upbeat, and a little familiar. He starts off beat, far behind the music with the breathiest, shakiest voice. He didn't look at the screen with the lyrics once, and missed many words. Then he realized he messed up and sighed into the microphone, or cursed to himself, only to return to the chorus with a lagging, breathy, shaky, and slightly loud, shiny people holding hands. His anxiety was amping up as the song went by, and the tension spread throughout the room. It was obvious that watching him made everyone increasingly uncomfortable, as it in turn made him. I was trying my best to smile and encourage my friends to clap along. All of a sudden, mid-song, Carl began whispering the lyrics very quietly, with his mouth right on the mic, and then his voice started breaking, and he stopped singing. He returned the mic to the stand with the music still playing, wiped tears from his eyes under his sunglasses, and abruptly walked off stage, grabbed his black purse from the booth, and speed walking left the bar in a hurry. It was unsettling. After the initial "what the fuck" feeling passed, we all sort of shrugged and laughed in shared awkwardness, and the party continued. My party was the talk of the theatre kid circuit for a few weeks. Going to a real bar with real weird strangers was all anyone wanted to talk about. My mom had to explain to me that Holly's mom said we weren't allowed to hang out with my mom as a chaperone anymore, since she took Holly to a bar and I taught her all about transgender people. 2 weeks go by, the week before opening night of Annie, Tech Week, as real theatre kids know. The street behind the theatre was blocked off with police tape. My mom was volunteering that night as backstage security, where she was seated outside on the street. She ended up doing some investigating and asked a group of homeless locals what was going on down the street. Turns out someone had murdered and dismembered his wife. Neighbors reported a horrific smell, and the police had found parts of her in pans on the stove, which is found on, and her head in the freezer. My mom always tells this part the same way, so I'll tell it this way too. That Carl was a f***ing character, the local said. Too bad we won't be seeing him around anymore. My mom went ballistic upon hearing the name, and asked for many details. Turns out, Carl was his stage name. He and his wife were well-known characters in the city. His wife had been seen wielding knives and running around town in various states of undress, and Carl was well known for his cross-dressing ways and prowling through the city at night. His mainstay favorite bar was, of course, the dive bar, where we had my birthday party. But the creepiest part is that when the police discovered the crime scene, it had been a couple of weeks since the murder, and 2 weeks earlier we were listening to Carl singing "Shiny Happy People Holding Hands." Not sure of the relevance, but my background, I am originally from rural northern Ontario, Canada, and I've always spent most of my time in the woods/nature regardless of where we moved. Over the years I've seen some weird shit, but this experience surely takes the cake. When I was 16 years old living with my mum in rural-ish NJ, USA, my best friend and I had an experience that we both still remember vividly, and my wife wants me to share the story to see what people think we saw. My buddy and I used to cut through this farmer's field because my mom's neighborhood and our local mall, maybe a mile or so long, it really had crops over the years, maybe 1 year of corn in the few years cutting through it, if I remember right. The field was barren on this day, and we were headed to the mall to hang out. We didn't notice anything unusual on the way to the mall through the field. We stayed in the mall about an hour or two, and went back through the field to get to my mom's. We didn't drink or eat anything in the mall that I remember, no drug usage or alcohol either. When we got to the tree line between the field and the mall, we saw a handful of people all dressed somewhat similar in overalls of some sort, plaid shirts collecting things off the ground. I figured they were harmless, and we knew the old guy's name who owned the field, so probably wouldn't get yelled at if we'd name dropped. As we made our way through the field and got closer, I remember feeling a lot of static energy. It looked like they were picking up smoking coals off the ground and throwing them in buckets. Weird, but we didn't say anything to these folks and just kind of skirted around till we were nearing the tree line back to my mom's neighborhood. We heard a loud whooshing noise, sort of like an air compressor. We turned back and there was a group of 6 identical white-suited men with Daft Punk-esque helmets that seemed to be shooting, sounding like their weapons made no noise, at the folks picking those things off the ground. Their sidearms looked like guns used to spray weed killers, or a paint sprayer, really long and thin. They didn't seem to notice us watching until my friend went into a panic and started freaking out. I grabbed him by his shirt and started dragging him towards the tree line. But he was in some sort of shock. I looked back as we were running, and they were all facing us, but not pursuing. My friend went home and we didn't talk to each other for about a week. Everyone we told to this date has said we were mad, minus my wife and father. I will say after the initial whoosh, we never heard another noise, not even a cricket for the whole encounter, till we made it back across the tree line. My family and I are from Australia, and back in 2007 we decided to take a month-long holiday to America. We travelled from LA up the west coast and then back down through Nevada. We did this by renting a car and doing the whole vacation road trip style. One night we were traveling towards Lompoc and stopped in Santa Barbara for the night to sleep. We drove around a while looking for a decently priced motel that wasn't too bring your own UV light, if you know what I mean. My mom and dad found a place that looked okay and went inside to inquire about the price of a room for the night, while my sister and I stayed in the car and listened to music on our iPods. We were bopping along to the Freya album I had bought that day, when my sister removed her headphones and said, "Look at Mom, what is she doing?" I looked up out the window and can see into the reception of the motel and see my dad talking to the manager, and my mom displaying very cold and odd body language. She's usually very friendly with the staff everywhere, so this was very odd for her. "What's wrong with her?" I said to my sister, as we kept a close eye on them. My mom was standing behind my dad with her arms crossed and looking around the place as if she was on guard for something, as if her hypervigilance senses had kicked in. After some time, my mom and dad get back in the car and discuss what to do about staying the night. My dad stated we wouldn't find anywhere cheaper for the night, and he was hungry and ready for dinner, so we better just stay here. Plus it was the last room available, so we would have to make a quick decision. To his dismay, my mum disagreed. "I don't like the place. I have a bad feeling," said my mum. My dad argued on, getting more and more irritated with my mum couldn't explain what she didn't like about the place, until my mum finally snaps and yells over my dad saying, "We are not staying here." "In hell, fine," my dad says as he starts the car and backs out of the motel driveway. At this point, my sister and I are looking at each other like, what just happened? But we stay quiet as Mum seems on edge. Anyway, we end up finding a place to stay that Mum approved of and bunkered down for the night. In the morning, we are all bustling around the motel room getting ready for the day. My dad turns up the TV to hear a news story about a shooting at the motel Mum didn't want to stay at. Turns out about 15 minutes after we left, a couple walked in and booked that last room, and the man that was behind them shot them because they took the last room. We all turned to look at my mum, who's standing there with wide-eyed, watching in horror. "Told you I had a bad feeling about that place," she said to my dad, who was pretending not to listen. Moral of the story is, always trust your gut, or better, your mum's gut. And that's it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do enjoy these videos, please leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and even comment down below which of these stories you enjoyed. It always helps to know what you guys do enjoy and what you guys don't, so I can always just narrow it down in future. But if you also like these kind of horror stories and you like fantasy and sci-fi or even just psychological horror, down below in the description is a link to an ebook version of my first novel called Gods and Monsters: The Lock. So if you'd like to give that a try, it is available on Amazon. I'm currently changing distributors, so the physical copies are not available at the moment, but as soon as they are, I will put the link down below in future. But for now, I hope you guys enjoy your day, your week, and see you next time. Bye bye.